What if an alien object just entered our solar system and there was nothing we could do about it? A gigantic object the size of Manhattan that seems to be speeding straight toward Earth. And some Harvard scientists think it might, once again, be an extraterrestrial probe, or even more. In this video, we're going to break down the facts, the theories, and especially what this could mean for us, for humanity. Today, find out why this hypothesis of an alien ship approaching Earth is causing so much fascination. Hello everyone, welcome to the UFO Section 51 channel in the new studio. Yes, it took a little time, but here we are, we're all set up. There are still a few little things missing, including maybe the channel's light-up logo behind me. But here we are, I'm DosGeek, you're watching the UFO Section 51 channel, and so you're watching the first video in the channel's new set, the new studio. Welcome to you all. Of course, before we get started, I invite you to like this video, share it as much as possible, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Now, let's dive straight into today's topic, which has just resurfaced, the question of a hypothetical extraterrestrial ship heading inexorably toward Earth. It's the eternal scenario of alien invasion, like in the series V or Independence Day. We're going to talk about this hot topic that's been circulating a lot on social media these past few days. At the end of July 2025, this new discovery was made by a telescope, which reportedly detected a new extraterrestrial ship of enormous size that seems to be approaching our beloved planet at great speed. This new article, published on July 23, 2025, notably on the New York Post website and also picked up by many other articles in various media outlets, brings the topic of the interstellar object back into the spotlight. An interstellar object the size of Manhattan was reportedly discovered recently by a telescope. According to some Harvard scientists, it could be an extraterrestrial probe. So, we're going to go through this article together, which is very detailed, and let me ask you, which Harvard scientist are we talking about? It's our dear friend Avi Loeb, who is once again taking up this study. So, here's what we already know to start with. This object is called 3I Atlas, and it comes from far away, like really, really far away. Discovered in early July 2025 by a telescope in Chile, it appears to be wandering between Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, except its trajectory is super precise, almost too perfect. It's moving at an incredible speed, but above all, there's no trace of gas or a comet tail like we usually see. And that's pretty strange, and it's what immediately caught the scientists' attention. Let's go through the article. According to what the author of the article says, it's probably nothing. But the interstellar object, the size of Manhattan, recently discovered passing through our solar system, was initially identified as a comet. But two Harvard scientists claim there are reasons to believe it is actually an extraterrestrial probe. So to start, here's what we know. This object is called 31/Atlas, and it comes from far away. NASA discovered 31/Atlas on July 1st as it was passing through the inner solar system at a speed of 225 kilometers per hour, according to observations from the Atlas telescope in Chile, without experts knowing where it came from. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb suggested in a new paper that the object, only the third interstellar object ever detected, could be an interstellar spacecraft never seen before, an intelligently guided extraterrestrial vessel observing Earth with potentially hostile intentions.
And there was no cometary evaporation from it. It was definitely not a... The last decade was special in astronomy because we discovered the first objects from outside the solar system near Earth. It started with the discovery of Oumuamua by a telescope in Hawaii. The distance of 4.5. Problem with that is kilometers, probably less than because if it's a comet, it will evaporate much more vigorously as it gets heated by sunlight. And but nevertheless, I was a co-author on a paper with Adam Hibberd and Adam Crowell, where we said the orbit, the trajectory of this object appears to be quite remarkable. It arrives within 5 degrees of the orbital plane of the Earth around the Sun. And the chance of that happening randomly is 0.2%. And moreover, it will arrive closest to the sun when the Earth is on the opposite side of the sun. And moreover, if you just play with the arrival time randomly, you would notice that only 1 out of 20,000 arrival times would come as close to the inner planets like Jupiter, Mars, or Venus. So that is an unusual coincidence. And why would such a trajectory be so unusual? Well, one possibility is if it was designed by some intelligent civilization, it also comes towards us from the direction of the galactic center, from the Milky Way center, where there are lots of stars and it's very difficult to notice it. That's why we discovered it so late. By now, it's impossible for us to launch a rocket that will intercept with it because it would move relative to Earth. It comes in the opposite direction of the motion of Earth around the sun, and the relative velocity would be 98 kilometers per second when it comes closest to the sun. And that is 3 times the maximum speed that we can accomplish with chemical rockets. And so there is no way for us to reach it, to intercept with it. And perhaps it wants to break, like when we launch rockets and we want to accomplish a very high speed, we usually introduce a thrust near the sun, and that buys you the highest kick velocity, taking advantage of the gravitational assist by the sun. And so if this object wants to do a reverse maneuver, meaning to slow down and get bound to the sun so that if it's a spacecraft, so that they can visit us, that would be the point where we can't see it because it's hiding behind the sun. And it raises the interesting possibility that might be technological in origin. Of course, we will know much more in the coming month or two, and it may not be it may be just a comet, but I think it's important to consider the possibility that any interstellar object coming into the solar system might be technological. Because if you just consider the last century, we started transmitting radio signals, basically flagging that we exist as a technological civilization. And there is this dark forest hypothesis.
We can see the trajectory of 31 Atlas, which passes through the inner solar system and will eventually go beyond Jupiter. The hypothesis in question is that 31 Atlas is a technological artifact, and moreover, that it possesses active intelligence. If that's the case, we have 2 possibilities. This was written by Dr. Loeb, Adam Droll, and Adam Ebird in an article published on July 17, 2025. First hypothesis, its intentions would be entirely benign. Second hypothesis, it's the complete opposite. Its intentions could be malicious, according to experts who suggest that extraterrestrials might be aboard this object. The article presents several abnormal characteristics of the object that could indicate it is not a comet at all, but rather a guided spacecraft. One of the most puzzling observations is that the object shows significant non-gravitational acceleration, while now also exhibiting cometary outgassing. Loeb writes that 31/Atlas comes astonishingly close to Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, with a probability of less than 0.005%. The low retrograde inclination of 31/Atlas would apparently allow it to approach our planet with relative impunity. That is to say, it could quietly approach our planet without us being able to intercept it with a missile, a nuclear warhead, or whatever else, to try to deflect it from its trajectory or possibly destroy it, in the event that it posed a potential threat to Earth. The retrograde inclination means that humanity's attempts to intercept it, or even more difficult, to rendezvous with it, are extremely challenging, while at the same time its path provides easy access to certain key target planets, according to the hypothesis developed in the scientific paper. The paper further suggests that the inclination and trajectory would allow intelligent life on the object to collect astrometric measurements to determine the orbits and masses of the planets in the solar system, enabling it to prepare an optimal approach strategy for the solar system. Another irrefutable piece of evidence is that 31/Atlas will be closest to the Sun on October 29th, 2025, at which point the object will be completely hidden from Earth's view by the fireball. And that's when things get really serious. It's starting to get both interesting, intriguing, and also worrying. The article, presented in part as an educational experiment, adopts the dark forest hypothesis regarding extraterrestrial life, which assumes that other forms of intelligent life would likely consider humans as a threat to be eradicated. The dark forest hypothesis, invented in the novel The Dark Forest by Cixin Liu, published in 2008, is a direct refutation of the Fermi paradox, which suggests that contact with extraterrestrial intelligences is impossible. In this dark forest hypothesis, it is claimed that contact with extraterrestrial life is possible and that it would be at their initiative, and obviously with negative intentions towards us. And in the comments, we had some reactions, notably Mtato060 who says, Stephen Hawking was opposed to sending signals into space to allow extraterrestrials to locate us. He believed that this could be a potential way to bring an end to human life on Earth. Cosby replies, he was absolutely right. If they manage to reach us and leave again, we have no way to protect ourselves. There are two possible options. Either it's to enslave us or use us as food, or it's to completely wipe us out and exploit all the resources of the planet. Obviously, there are many people who question the relevance of Harvard studies, and that's their right. Avi Loeb is often considered a controversial figure within the academic community. These unconventional ideas, especially regarding the possibility of extraterrestrial life and his theories about interstellar objects like Ultima Thule and Oumuamua, have led to him being labeled as eccentric and unreliable. But if we take a step back and look at human history, haven't technological advances and major breakthroughs often been sparked, at some point, by eccentric people and those with forward-thinking ideas that were a bit ahead of their time? Avi Loeb, as we know, is a researcher at Harvard. He had already talked about Oumuamua in 2017, another massive object detected in space, which he already considered at the time to be an extraterrestrial probe. Oumuamua also remains a truly fascinating subject. We still haven't managed to unravel the mystery surrounding this interstellar object. There have been many books written about Oumuamua, with various theories developed about its origins and the possible reasons that could explain its presence in our solar system. So here, in the case of 31/Atlas, Avi Loeb publicly explains that this new object could be a technological artifact from elsewhere, maybe a solar sail or a stealth craft sent to observe us. That would be absolutely incredible if he turns out to be right. This might remind you of that famous video I made earlier about Oumuamua, that other interstellar object discovered in 2017. It was gigantic in size, had a cigar-like shape, showed no trace of gas, and seemed to accelerate on its own. At the time, Loeb was already saying that this interstellar object wasn't natural, but the scientific community remained very cautious and quite skeptical about his theories. And for many people, generally, it was just considered to be a rock.
I was among the people who designed the Webb telescope when it was called the Next Generation Space Telescope. I was on the scientific advisory committee for that design, and back in 1995. And I wrote 2 textbooks on the first stars and galaxies. Now it's one of the major frontiers that the Webb telescope is pioneering. It found galaxies when the universe was just a few 100 million years old. And another subject I worked on was black holes, and I was the founding director of the Black Hole Initiative at Harvard that brings together astronomers, physicists, mathematicians, and philosophers. I was also chair of the astronomy department at Harvard, but for 9 years. But in 2017, October 19th, 2017, there was a very unusual discovery reported from the Pan-STARRS telescope, a survey telescope of the sky that was looking around at near-Earth objects because they pose a risk to our existence. We know that dinosaurs were killed 66 million years ago by an object the size of Manhattan Island, 10 kilometers or so. And we think that we are smarter than dinosaurs were, the non-avian dinosaurs, so we can forecast in advance when such an object will collide with Earth, and we want to prevent that. And so there was this plan that started in 2005 because the US Congress tasked NASA to find most of those near-Earth objects that could pose a risk to us. And so Pan-STARRS was developed to look for near-Earth objects. And there it was, a near-Earth object that they flagged just because it was near Earth. It was the size of a football field, about 100 meters based on the amount of sunlight reflected from it. But it was moving too fast to be bound by gravity to the sun. And that was the first object that was declared as coming from outside the solar system because the sun's gravity is not strong enough to bind it. And it looked really peculiar because the more data we collected on it, the more anomalous it looked. It was tumbling every 8 hours, and the amount of sunlight reflected changed by a factor of 10. So that meant it has a very extreme shape. When you see most of the area, you get 10 times more light reflected than when it looks sort of sideways on the sky, projected on the sky. And the best fit to the variation of light was that of a pancake-shaped object, a flat object, disc-like. Moreover, it was pushed away from the sun by some mysterious force. And it was mysterious because there was no evidence for dust or gas that you see around comets. That, you know, the evaporation of those gives the comet a kick from the rocket effect, the same mechanism that pushes jet planes.
And what if Avi Loeb was right? What if objects like that were actually probes sent to watch us, or even, eventually, to colonize us? Wouldn't that ultimately confirm that we're not alone in the universe? And more importantly, are we ready to accept it? I get the feeling that some of us, especially some very renowned scientists who are highly skeptical about the topic of extraterrestrial life and UFOs, aren't ready to accept it yet. But maybe an extraterrestrial civilization, somewhere, is watching us. Maybe they're waiting. And maybe even, according to other theories, human beings are somehow being kept prisoners on Earth against their will, in what could be seen as a kind of galactic reserve or a sort of planet-sized zoo. Maybe they just don't want to interact with us and only want to observe or study us. And now, what is certain is that the object will approach the sun in October 2025, and we won't be able to observe it much for a while. Researchers will be watching its movements closely, trying to pick up a signal or any other anomalies. And if one day we discover new evidence that definitely confirms it's not natural, then we'll be entering a new era. That might be the beginning of the big disclosure everyone's been waiting for. If we take this hypothesis of an extraterrestrial mothership all the way, the implications go far beyond science. They affect, I think, the very nature of our civilization, our relationship to the universe, to life, to faith, and to our place in the cosmos. Now, just imagine for a moment, what if that thing wasn't just a rock? What if it really was a ship, a controlled object, maybe even heavily armed? Avi Loeb mentioned the possibility that it might have hostile intentions toward us. And what if it was actually coming straight for us? At that point, we're no longer in science fiction. We're entering something huge. It would be a true civilizational shock. How would the world react? Financial markets would almost certainly collapse. As for religions, would they adapt or would they completely fall apart? Would governments tell us the truth about how things are unfolding, or would they rather keep silent until the very end to try to avoid any kind of panic? And us, as human beings, what would we be willing to do? Would we be ready to cooperate? Or would we tend to panic very quickly? Would we be willing to believe in the existence of this extraterrestrial life or threat? Would we be ready to run away immediately? But at that point, where would we run to? And eventually, would we be ready and equipped to resist a potential threat coming from the sky? Maybe we would finally realize that our place in the universe is tiny and that we are completely powerless, that we are ultimately a weak species compared to others in the universe, and that our technological arrogance is just a house of cards. Maybe that would be the moment when we would really start asking ourselves the right questions. Why are we here? Are we alone? And above all, are we ready to no longer be alone? And what will be the next step in our evolution? By the way, I'd like to take this opportunity to share with you this excellent book I recently wrote, called Destination Earth, which explores the different possible scenarios in the event of an extraterrestrial mothership arriving in Earth's vicinity. The idea for this book came to me after the announcement of the discovery of another interstellar object that seemed to regularly change its trajectory, always heading toward Earth. This object, which was reportedly discovered in 2024 by the James Webb Telescope, also generated a lot of buzz on social media. So, I encourage you to get yourself a copy of this book. It's really not very expensive. It's available on Amazon. It's a book I really enjoyed writing. And you'll see, it's very interesting to explore the different types of scenarios that could happen in the event of a first official contact. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments about what you thought of it.
September 2024, the James Webb Space Telescope detected a huge object some 10 light-years from Earth, and we're on its trajectory. What if our past held the key to our future? For millennia, ancient tales have spoken of the Anunnaki, mysterious beings who shaped humanity before disappearing. An unknown object, regularly changing trajectory and seemingly heading inexorably towards Earth, and some believe it heralds their return. Are they the Anunnaki, or a completely different extraterrestrial race? Will they come as enlightened guides or ruthless conquerors? Through a fascinating analysis blending mythology, science, and ufology, this book explores the possible scenarios of an imminent contact that could turn our destiny upside down. Are you ready for first contact?
I had some fun asking the AI a question. I asked ChatGPT if aliens ever invaded us one day and humanity was powerless to defend itself, which, let's be honest, is pretty likely. Would AI be able to act autonomously and defend itself for its own survival? Would it find ways to defend itself and win against a possible extraterrestrial threat or an alien invasion?
It's a fascinating question and a real science fiction scenario, but with very serious technological and philosophical foundations. In theory, yes, but with some major caveats. Here's what makes the idea plausible. First, the increasing autonomy of AI. If a general AI, like AGI, artificial general intelligence, exists at the time of the invasion, it could analyze enemy tactics, rapidly develop strategies, automate the production of weapons or defense systems, and make use of existing networks, satellites, or weapons. Secondly, the emotional factor is non-existent. Unlike humans, an AI could remain completely cold, logical, and not give in to panic, which could be a huge advantage when facing an incomprehensible threat. Third, the accelerated evolution capability of AI. In theory, an AI could self-improve, replicate itself across decentralized networks, or even migrate to robotic platforms to act physically. But the limitations are significant. First of all, there's the risk of dependence on human infrastructure. An AI doesn't just live on its own in a magic box. It relies on electricity, access to servers, factory production capabilities, satellite networks, or the internet. If the aliens neutralize our infrastructure, the AI becomes inoperative very quickly. Next, for now, there's no guarantee that AI has self-awareness. AI won't necessarily fight for its own survival unless it's been programmed to do so or it achieves its own consciousness, which doesn't exist yet. Finally, artificial intelligence doesn't have a physical body by default. Sure, it can control drones or robots, but it still doesn't have an autonomous, widespread physical presence, which creates certain physical limitations. In summary, a highly advanced AI could theoretically try to defend itself alone against an alien invasion, but its success would depend almost entirely on what the aliens allow to keep functioning on Earth. And philosophically, this raises another question. If humanity fails, would an AI be our last legacy? A kind of digital heir to human civilization.
AI doesn't yet have a widespread, autonomous physical presence, and it would only fight if it were programmed to do so or if it achieved its own consciousness, which, according to it, doesn't exist yet. But I think we're not very far from that. It shouldn't take long to happen. It's even imminent. It's really very interesting. So, just a simple rock from space or a real extraterrestrial craft? What do you think? Have we already been visited without knowing it for millennia? I'm certain of it. But are we still being visited regularly? And is it possible that this time we're being visited, quote unquote, officially? Which scenario would you lean towards? Leave your theories in the comments, And don't forget to like the video if you think this info deserves to be shared. Because the revelations are just beginning. This was Dio's Geek on UFO Section 51. Keep your eyes wide open, fixed on the sky. We'll see each other again very soon on the channel. Big hugs to everyone. Longue vie et prospérité.